Okay, 8th graders, today we're going to be working with Chapter 4.4, Adding and Subtracting Rational Numbers. I anticipate that some of you will have questions when you come to class tomorrow, but let's try seeing if we can get it. I think some of you can. A lot of this goes back to fractions that we've had in the past. Remember that when you add and subtract fractions, you have to have a common denominator, and we usually use the least common denominator. We are going to have to change our fractions to equivalent fractions, and then note, we only add or subtract the numerators, we just keep the LCD, and then we are careful to simplify if necessary. Now, your book and your worksheets are probably going to be most horizontal problems, so that's why I'm working them horizontally. In A, you have to first find your common denominator. I always start with the larger of the two denominators in terms of their numerical values, and then I check, can I take the 2 into the 8? Yes, I can, so that has to be my common denominator. So I can just keep the 5/8. Now I have to change 1/2 to something over 8. Well, what do you have to take times 2 in order to get the 8? 4. So I have to multiply the numerator times 4. You might remember we did this in years past like this, or I showed it to you like this. Whichever way you prefer. Okay? So that's how I got the 4/8. Now, 5 plus 4, because I only add the numerators, and then I'm going to get that over 8, and then I'm going to have to reduce. 8 goes into 9 one time. I will get a remainder of 1 when I subtract. So that's going to be 1/8. Hit pause and do this problem, and then I'll work it here so you can see how it's done. Okay, that's B. You'll notice that you need to simplify. I worked it vertically because some people actually like to see them worked vertically, and sometimes you will see them written vertically on your worksheet. Go ahead and try C, and then I will show you how it's done. Okay, I start with my 9. 6 does not go into 9, so I will need the second multiple of 9. That means take 9 times 2. 18. 6 will go into 18, so therefore that's my common denominator. 4 over 9 equals 8 over 18. 1 over 6 equals 3 over 18. When I subtract, I will get 5 over 18, and that is already in lowest terms. You hit pause and do D, and I'll show you how it's supposed to be done. And there you have example D. Common denominator is 8. Okay, E. Alright, this gets to be one of the harder parts of today's lesson, because those integer rules about addition and subtraction apply to rational numbers as well. Since this is subtracting a negative, we need to remember that it's add the opposite. If you remember, when you add a positive number and a negative number, you're actually going to subtract their absolute values. So 3 3/4 minus 2 1/2. The common denominator is 4. Now I subtract. 3 over 4 minus 2 over 4 is 1/4. 3 minus 2 is 1. Now I look back at my problem. What do I have more of? Positives or negatives? Right here, I've got more positives, so my answer has to be positive. You go ahead and try F, and then I'll go over it. In this problem, I'm going to take 2 1/4 minus 1 2/3, because I have to subtract their absolute values. The common denominator is 12. I cannot take 3 minus 8, and you can't all of a sudden flip it around and go, oh, I'll just take 8 minus 3. Nope, can't do that, not allowed. You're going to have to borrow, or what we call regroup. Now, the shortcut is to take the denominator plus the numerator, and that's the numerator that you're going to use. So, 15 minus 8 is 7. 12 and you are done, except to determine whether or not your answer is positive or negative. Well, you have more negatives, so my answer has to be negative. G is here for one reason and one reason only. It has a bear of a common denominator. If you see 12, 16, and 18 in a problem, you better come to your lesson packet, because your common denominator is going to be 144. Yes, you take 18 and you keep going, but it's not real easy to do. So I'm giving it to you. I never noticed it when I hit the worksheet, so I always give you the problem. 12 times 12 gives me 144, so 12 times 11 is 132. 16 times 9 gives me 144, 9 times 5 is 45. 18 times 8 is 144, 11 times 8 is 88. After I have done all the subtraction, 132 minus 45 happens to be 87. 87 plus 88 gives me 175. 144 goes in there once. 175 minus 44 is 31, which is a prime number. There's your final answer. If you're going to use decimals and fractions, at this point you're probably going to have to change the decimal to a fraction. 0.6 means 6/10. So you are going to have 14 6/10 plus negative 3 1/2, 3 1/5 rather. So remember that means to subtract. And this is 2/10. I always copy over the 6/10. It's a habit I had since I was a kid. 6 minus 2 is going to be 4/10. 14 minus 3 is 11. Now I look at my problem. I have more positives. That means my answer is positive, but I do have to reduce. Okay, folks, equations are going to be a little trickier than you're used to, even though this looks very simple, because that's like, whoa, we did addition equations way back. The truth is, I always tell students it's easier if you just change everything to common denominator right away. Okay? 1/4, the common denominator is 8. 1/4 equals 2/8. Minus 2/8. It's going to equal 1/8 minus 2/8. I'm left with D. Now here again, if you go back to add the opposite, you'll get these. Because now my 8 stays there. All I have to do is deal with that numerator. So I have is 1 plus negative 2. Well, that's negative 1. So now I'm done. And J, we're going to be adding to both sides, but again, I changed to the common denominator. P minus 1, and my common denominator is 6, so 3 over 6 plus 1 and 3/6 equals 2 over 6 plus 1 and 3/6. P is going to equal, I have to add the fractions, 2/6 plus 3/6 is 5/6, and then my 1. And I'm actually adding 2 positive integers over on this right side, so I'm finished. In K, I'm going to have to take into consideration the fact that I've got a negative integer. My common denominator is going to be 10. 1/5 is 2/10 plus 5 and 2/10 equals negative 3 and 7/10 plus 5 and 2/10. Now here again, you have to remember that you're subtracting. What you're really doing, and I'll put it down over here, you are really taking 5 and 2/10 minus 3 and 7/10. Okay? You cannot take 2 minus 7. Remember, you can't flip it around to 7 minus 2. So I'm going to have to regroup. 10 plus 2 is 12. 12 minus 7 is 5. And 4 minus 3 is 1. Now, I reduce that, and I will get 1 and 1/2. Then I have to look. Do I have more negatives, or do I have more positives? I've got more positives, so my answer is going to stay positive. And that concludes today's lesson. Again, if you have questions, remember, I am available. In this lesson, in the past, yep, I've had students who've asked a lot of questions. That's okay, folks. It means you're trying, okay? So, check in with you tomorrow. And for now, it's scouting out.